Welcome to the Spirit-Centered Business Podcast, where we blend the spiritual with the practical for supernatural results. Now, here is your host, Bralynn Newby.
Well, hello there. Welcome back to Spirit-Centered Business. I'm here with Rod Smith for part 2. And if you missed part 1, he has an that's actually credible story. So definitely go back to spiritcenteredbusiness.com and check that out, or wherever you're listening to the podcast. And we are on all of the major, Spotify and iHeartRadio and Spreaker and Apple and, wherever you can find it. Plus Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook for the video version of it. So definitely go back and get that. But Rod has an incredible story, and we left on a cliffhanger last week. So we're going to continue with that. Someone asked you, if God is so good, why did he kill so many people in the Bible? So let's pick up there and then we'll get into what you're doing now.
Well, the long version was I was scratching my head, actually confused, and I'm like, you got a good point. Like, I don't know how to rebuttal that. So, really just, looking through what Chuck Missler was laying out, because I was aware of Chuck at the time. But eventually I arrive at L.A. Marzulli. And LA actually had, some more framework that I think resonated with me better. And then from LA, I found Dr. Michael Heiser, who actually grew up probably like 45 minutes from an hour from where I grew up. He grew up in Lebanon, PA, and I was just outside of Philadelphia. So when I found that out, I'm like, LA's from Pennsylvania too. He's like from like 15 minutes from where I live now.
Wow.
Yeah, a bunch of weirdos from PA, man. Something in the air.
Exactly.
Dr. Michael Heiser, very well documented and credible.
Yeah.
And this is where I think people started to understand it's not just, a bunch of weird people trying to make sense of stuff for the sake of being able to keep that belief. Um, it's like they're just compounding ideas and thoughts on top of ideas and thoughts in order to maintain their position. What Mike did was bring in that ancient Israelite mindset and help introduce that to the modern day church, which started to pull on the threads of we have much better answers now. And the seed plot, right? We start to see these threads throughout the Bible where it was like, how did I miss this in the building? And then you ask your pastors and they're like, well, in seminary, we take most of them a Sethite view. So I just started to see this stuff. It's not all truth because one man presents this style. And I already kind of knew that because I'm digging into the word for myself. But when Mike highlighted, these threads and about the ancient Israelite mindset, and then I started to really gravitate towards the Bible never contradicts itself. It always has an answer. And all of this could be laid out quite easily with greater teachers who obviously went ahead and kind of laid these foundations. We can ride on their shoulders for a little bit and now put it into a modern day cadence where my generation could understand it. And that's what I just started doing. And there was a ton of loneliness and a ton of rejection at the personal, like face to face basis with this, what I consider to be like ground shattering. I'm like, dude, I got an answer for you. Like the Bible, like you're going through, but it was like met with a lot of opposition. So I was like, interesting. So nobody really wanted an answer. It was just their rebuttal to try to discredit the gospel that I was preaching.
Exactly.
And I'm like, now that's fascinating. Now I didn't know Dan Duvall at the time, and I didn't know false reality overlay and all this different stuff, but I was experiencing it, a lot of resistance. And just a lot of, I won't bore the audience with a ton of, kind of smaller stories throughout that. But, the podcasting journey, I've just interviewed and talked with so many great people that have planted seeds. And the whole idea, with the first podcast, which I don't recommend anybody listens to, I started in end of 2018 through 2019. And I was just getting my feet wet. It was bad audio. It was really messy. But the idea was, I'm listening to Canary Cry Radio. I have personal experiences. I'm listening to Sasquatch Chronicles, right? I meet Tony Merkel in person, and then and he's driving truck at the time, so he was delivering where I worked, because Tony Merkel from the Confessionals is from the Pennsylvania, is same neighborhood pretty much that I'm from, and all of this stuff is like bursting out of the seams. I'm getting rejection on a personal level, and I remember Tony, getting turned on to his show and like realizing, dude, you live like 10 minutes away, that people do want a mild biblical take. It's just not going to be Christians who actually want to hear it. And I'm like,
Interesting.
fascinating.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
knew what Tony was doing and what space he was in, but I was like, I had a heart for the church. So I'm like getting rejection, but I'm like, I can't be the only person that is like bold or just like, courageous for the Lord, really just blunt and out and open with it, that um is in the world in my age range who believe Nephilim are real, who believe, all this stuff in the Bible is real. I can't be the only person. So I
Right.
remember transitioning into the millennial mustard seed, God giving me the name. I wrestled with it. I'm like, it's a mouthful. I laugh. We're year 5, and I'm like, it's just funny because it's first couple times I say it, it's a mouthful. It's a lot to type in when you're searching for it. And everybody else has cool podcasts like, Dog Man Killer and like
Blurry
Alien.
creatures. Yeah.
Yeah, Blurry Creatures, yeah, the Confessionals, like all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
Actually at the time Blurry Creatures didn't even exist. So I
Right.
mean they're
Right.
killing it, but I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm the millennial mustard seed, but I just remember God being it, you know, don't change it, dude. Don't change it. And I'm like, okay. So my whole thing was I'm a millennial. I felt small and insignificant. I understood being on the cusp of technology, like we talked about in segment 1, and
Mhm.
just the unique kind of environment I grew up in. And then the concept of this mustard seed of faith, because I didn't want to portray something I wasn't. I knew I had a little bit of faith. I wasn't walking on water or doing anything amazing, still not. I'm the mustard seed. I'm just a little thing that gets planted and it slowly grows, right? So I really felt the millennial mustard seed originally was just representing my generation and taking a stand for, faith is okay. And it's a process. I don't My experience was not overnight like Paul. He gets blinded
Yeah.
and then mine's long and drawn out. So all of that made sense for me. And God just kept telling me, that's the name. That's the name of the show. So I left Not of This World behind and just pursued the Millennium Mustard Seed from that point forward. And any questions? I'm sorry. I don't know if I even answered your question you had a second ago.
No, it's all good. We want to hear the story. No, so you were at 3M,
Hmm.
and was your wife also interested in the supernatural things and
Mm,
the bizarre stuff like you were? Or did she just think you were
yeah.
a nut?
So she's been my refiner's fire in many ways and a lot of reality check. What's really provocative about this story is actually the twins that I had when I was much younger are not with my wife now, right? So my wife is from Southeast Asia. She's actually from the Philippines. And,
Mm,
I met her like 9, almost 10 years ago. And when I brought anything up, it wasn't like weird or strange. She didn't have much comment on stuff, but her worldview was all of that stuff's real, but people will laugh at you if you talk about it. So in her culture, they won't
mm,
openly talk about the things that they have been experiencing for as long as they record their information. I mean, she has personal stories. I shared with L.A. Marzulli a particular story back in 2020 when he was on for the first time about my wife seeing literally like a 12-footer and the region it all happened in. And he confirmed that he had a close colleague at the time that went and actually was documenting those cases from that region. So when you guys listen to the beginning of the Millennial Mustard Seed, when LA says the young braves would hide up in the trees with a spear and they would drop down on the 10 to 12 footers that walk by and kill them and then drag their body into the village and the village would feast on the body. That's actually in the every opening of the shows that I do. That's LA commenting on me sharing one of my wife's anecdotal story. I mean, she had an experience, but that spawned LA to then tell me about what was going on in the provinces in the Philippines. So my
Wow.
wife really lived and breathed in that space, but I was like a little bit eclectic about it, the way that I went about and did all this, because it's like multi-layered with me. Everything's multi-layered. I don't see just simplicity in things. So for her, she's like, I live and breathe in that space. Like, I don't need to really talk about it. I don't want to get made fun of. So as the years would go on, me and her would just have conversations, and you know, she doesn't wanna come on the mic, but for her to sit there with tears in her eyes and say, "Oh, yeah, these creatures are real, and we don't go out after dark, and these providences are plagued by this and that." I mean, here I am sitting with my, beautiful little wife, and she's expressing these things to me most of the times in tears, like, over the years. So I'm like, "Well, I know I'm not crazy. I know what my experiences are." Hers superseded mine, but it wasn't something that she ever felt would be accepted in America. Like, it's like, "No, you guys are entertained with Hollywood with that. Like, you guys watch Netflix and you guys play video games, but, like, that's real life where I have family." And so that was a lot of this refiner's fire to like m I wanted my show like, I have a little bit of fun, but I wanted it to be really sober because there's a large group of people out there that are not making memes about this stuff. They're not joking about it. It's not humor based, it's trauma based, and it's culturally based generation after generation after generation. So because of that being such a strong, I guess you could say, influence on the way that I'm viewing things and then my own personal background, I wanted it to be thorough, unrushed, and I wanted a balance from the person next door all the way up to the highest academia I could get. I don't leave anybody out, everybody in between. I just wanted that balance of you're not alone, it's real. Here
Mhm.
we are. So that's just like, with my wife, how she kind of nudged me along and kept me grounded along the way too. Like there's certain things where I'm like, I'm not going to go too deep down the rabbit hole if it tugs on the scriptures, because I do consider myself a modern Berean, which does mean I like to study daily and check my mind, make sure it actually fits in and it's not just too deep and far away. But it doesn't mean I'm a stranger to some of the weirdest things to talk about. And so I have my own balance of that. But
It's really
so
good.
she's played a critical role. Yeah, she has.
And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my producer and my
Mm.
video editor. They're also from the Philippines. So, hey,
Oh,
Reckon.
cool.
Yeah, exactly. Since you're mentioning the Philippines, I just want to give
Yeah,
them a shout out. They do an awesome job producing
that's
both of my
amazing.
podcasts
So
and
cool.
editing all of the videos and putting together the graphics. So, okay. So,
Mm.
now are you getting income with your podcast? Is it monetized?
Yeah, so I
Okay.
never monetized the show up until I had some significant changes with employment, which I'd
Okay.
like to say happened about 6 months ago at this point.
Oh,
So
wow.
I started doing the Spotify ads where I would record the ad, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're making enough to like pay the Wi-Fi and pay for post production. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And I didn't really want to go this route because we do have some supporters monthly. There's a couple people that do the reoccurring through Spotify to help. A lot of work goes into this, as you know, right? I'm a one man team, so it's just me, myself, and I do all the scheduling, all the post production. I purchase rights to the music I use, so like there's an expense to doing it, and then
Yes.
time and research and stuff like that. So I started running ads recently, they're just commercials, So yeah, we're fully monetized at this point in time. Yeah.
Oh, good. Very
Mhm.
good. Excellent. So definitely to the audience, definitely go check that out. Millennial Mustard Seed. And is Spotify your main platform then?
So I use
Or
Spotify for podcasters, but it's funny. I think like 52% when I look at analytics come in through Apple Podcasts, and only like 30 some percent comes in through Spotify. But I don't really have a preference. My goal beyond like monetizing the show, because that's so recent, it was never to make money. But then I started to realize like, well, I have a deficit, so I don't really want
yeah,
to do that to
right?
people. But like,
Right.
Guess what? I'm running commercials. I've been doing this for, 5 years. I got hundreds of hours, hundreds and hundreds of hours into it. So I kind of am in this weird situation right now where I didn't want to go that route, but um really it should be minute in the big picture with as diverse of a library and information and um everything that's been collected and compartmentalized on the mustard seed. It's not a big deal in my opinion to run a couple commercials here and there. So
Yeah.
hopefully the
Yeah.
listeners feel the same way.
Yeah. No, it's all good. Really great information, and we always love to support a good
Mhm,
cause. I don't run ads. I don't have a membership
mhm,
at this time because I'm also in my fifth year of this show, and then I'm in my
mhm.
second year of the other show.
Okay.
But it's like this is my give back. This is my outreach, if you will. So I haven't monetized it, although I do have people who sew in because I have a give button on Spirit Centered Business, and I have people who sew in, which I am so thankful for, and they get extra prayers, you know, so they get an extra blessing back. So I get that. So w- what up until 6 months ago, what were you doing, and were you able to share your faith in that capacity?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've always kind of been, since I came to the Lord, have been bold. It's just the way the information got delivered would change as I would learn more and I guess you could say becoming unto all men what they are in order that you can win some. Now, it doesn't mean I became a drunk in order to talk to
Yeah,
people who
no.
drink, but with a mature mindset, that idea was, obviously, I mean, outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, diverse culture, there's millions of people within, 10 miles, right? It's a big city, even though I'm in the suburbs. And just learning how to engage with different people and even different religions, right? And a lot of this footwork was done like just me personally. Like I didn't do too much street ministry with ministries. I have, but I always just would find myself in these peculiar situations. And then I'm like a magnet for people wanting to tell me their supernatural encounters.
Oh,
Like
I
the
love it.
strangest thing. Yeah, it would
Mhm.
be weird. Like I'm like here in my head where I'm like, oh, I got to pay these bills. Oh, the car needs inspected. But like I'll meet somebody who'll start talking with me and then like telling me all of this stuff. And I'm like, this just happens all the time. Like I should just have a portable microphone. I'd probably have 500 episodes by now. So, you know, critical, you know, the spirit of God kind of tugging me and leading me, and just the way he set everything up, encountering Mike Heiser's work and the foundation with Chuck Missler, and then all these interviews, I just got sharper and sharper and sharper to the
Mhm.
point where God is allowing me to, I guess you could say, engage in some of the harder situations. I mean, a lot of pastors listen. I get emails from pastors all around the country and I talk with a lot of pastors even on a weekly basis, and just to see how unprepared they are from seminary, but there is a willingness to be like, what does that process look like, and how do you really engage, and where does that connect together? So like it's so weird how it just started out feeling like so lonely, and now it's like you got blurry creatures out there like changing the game, right? And then you got weirdos like me coming in being like, Jesus is real, reptilians are probably real, and here's why. Right? And just going through all this stuff. And the caliber of people I talked with personally, like CEOs of decent sized companies, like reputable people, all the way to the guy next door, like we're finding out these campfire stories are being forced into the town square. And a lot of the times it's because the government is pushing, we know the UFO disclosure. I don't believe in any of the narratives that they push. I believe that working out your salvation with fear and trembling is done on a personal level, but I also believe in fivefold ministry, which means, we do have people that serve. We do have people that have the gift of prophecy. I believe in the gift. So when I look at this stuff, I see that we fit together. When we dovetail each other's episodes, like I don't listen to a ton of podcasts, but I do listen to some, and I'll be like, man, that fits in with what I was just doing. And you can start to see this is not one man leading the show. There's this humility that cloaks it. I don't know if everybody actually understands how intense this is going to become, and a blessing for many people what's coming down the pipeline. But God is stirring up a generation, and it's all starting to slowly make sense, because God's doing it on his time. So we have things being primed, questions being asked. We're having people forced into understanding that the world is changing around them and these old tactics didn't work. The gospel is the same. Gospel's never changed, but how we administer that and how we actually become unto people what they are, just like the Apostle Paul did when he was at the Parthenon, I believe it was. He used the statue of the unknown God in the
Mhm.
presence of the Greeks to be like, here, I'm going to make a declaration to you on today. So I think looking for those opportunities is being genuine to scriptures like be wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove, right? And I don't think everybody is called to that, but I think that it's been overlooked in the building for so long. It seems strange, but the tide is starting to turn. More people are becoming aware of this stuff. So it's good in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you started your first podcast, did you think I just need to get this word out and I don't care who listens to it, I just really feel like I need to just do this podcast? Or did
Yes.
you have okay, all right. All right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of how I felt with it
Hmm.
too. It's like I was so sick of seeing the division between this is my work and this is my spiritual, and they don't
Exactly.
mix. And it's people living so compartmentalized, and
Hmm.
that is just not God designed us, or He didn't design our destiny that way. And it really makes for a a bifurcated kind of life if
Exactly. Well said. Yeah.
yeah, especially if you're only on like a church for an hour on Sunday is my spiritual life. And then the rest of the week, I'm going to live a different way. And I'm going to
Hmm.
present myself, false in church. So I like it. I wanted to just, this is what spirit centered business is all about, is to
Mm.
blend that. So I love that you just like said, I'm having these experiences. I know these things.
Hmm.
I have a mouth, I want to speak, and getting it out there. So I love that you're
Yeah.
bringing that out to the world. And you're using a very um, interesting, fascinating, compelling,
Mm.
captivating kind of topic to get that gospel story in there. I
Yeah.
love,
Yeah.
yeah. Was that
Got it.
part of the plan?
The Millennium Mustard Seed, like I said, I'm wrestling with it personally. My wife is definitely changing the atmosphere in a very deep and sobering way with behind the scenes conversations. The
Mhm.
Bible is stating what it's stating. I'm learning answers to questions like, well, he's not bipolar. He clearly was killing them for a reason. And now that we have people like Derek Gilbert, we can see why, right? So as that confidence started to build, my goal was the millennial generation is the heart and the church, right? Because we have the falling away where people are more involved with the god of their belly or their today TikTok, back then it was whatever, Instagram, right? And technology, screen time. So my whole thing was like, well, I'm small and insignificant for now, but God was speaking certain things to me and I'm like, I can't tell anybody what God is telling me. They're gonna have to wait. We're just gonna capture this growth journey. So with a million messages and signals of confusion and chaos, my whole thing was like, let's take a journey together. Let's go through this. And it is a bit more sobering than playful, although we have fun on the podcast. Like we keep our humor, but it's not the main basis. It really is, we've had some testimonies with some of the deepest things in the SRA community. And then
Yeah,
Dr. Monzo, just shaking the whole entire thing right now with our part 3 that was released and a part 4 to come with him. SIT, satanic information technology, looking into nanopathogens. Like we're leaving nothing out. We're kind of overturning every rock. And it started to I didn't have that plan from the beginning. It's like it
yeah,
happened. But as I see the way that it happened, I was just like, yeah, this is interesting. I mean, the whole idea was like I'm capturing my own journey and other people are already reflecting because they're there too. So it kind of became like a small community of people that were growing together and it still grows to this day. So praise God.
yeah. That's beautiful. I have a feeling that some people are not connecting some dots to the answer to the question about why God was killing people, even though we've said it. Would you please connect those dots? Just say it. Just
Yeah. So I do not take a Sethite view when we look at Genesis 6:4 and the seed plot war, right? So we have the seed of the serpent versus the seed of the woman, right? And there's multiple different incursions and great fall, great societies falling away from God, right? We see
Mhm.
the Tower of Babel. It's not just one thing, right? So the verse says that the Beni Elohim saw the Banath Adam. So the sons of God saw the daughters of Adam that they were fair and they take wives. And I'm like, okay, can't argue with that. Gary Wayne's thoroughly went through it, I think 5 or 6 different times with me over the years. Can't argue with the research, right? So you start to look at it, but it feeds all these other threads where now we can start to understand that angels, which are ministering spirits, right? The angelos in the Greek and malak in the Hebrew, it means a ministering spirit. God is spirit, right? But we know that angels manifest, for example, when they come and hang out with Abraham, right? We can see that they can actually uh, fully manifest on this side of the veil. So once that was undisputable, and I understood the seed plot, from like Mike Heiser's work and stuff like that, I started to look at it and go, the spiritual warfare that's raging all around us, I believe the veil's thinning and is becoming more presently known in modern day times, right? And working with like Dave Beverly behind the scenes, he's been on once now, but he was NASA tenure for like 12 or 13 years. And he developed a lot of the technology for NASA, for the James Webb Telescope and McMurdo Sound in Antarctica, doing the calibration gauges with all this advanced technology. Like he was the guy, he was the poster child for like a long time. And hearing, even to this day, learning more where he's going, well, I don't think it's artificial intelligence. I think it's angelic intelligence, right? And then understanding what elementals are. So we have natural materials where, even our cell phones, these things are not foreign. They're made of materials that are right here on the etrets on the earth. So once I started to see all of these different phases come together, I'm like, the angels are manifesting. We've been at war, just like the Bible says, since the garden. It is the seed of the serpent against the seed of the woman. Yeshua has won the war. He has risen from the grave just as he said he would. The battle's won, but we are still in this time slot. We're still experiencing and playing out this scenario because every yacht and every tittle in God's word will come to completion. And even the spaces in between those are significant and important. So it's really just, you have to get the unlearn the things that we shouldn't really know in modern day times, which is going to be your denominational preferences, right? Like Chuck Missler would say, hermeneutical hygiene. He used to say all the time, right? And we're constantly brushing up and constantly cleaning up and being tight and precise in our language because um, how else would you walk out your salvation with fear and trembling unless you actually were praying about this stuff, you were researching, you were studying to show yourself well approved, you're taking it to God, you're sharpening on greater minds than yourself, and you're comparing and not hiding any views. I love that about Chuck, man. He would lay out all the views and be like, man, I'm not going to be selective. I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm going to tell you what the word says, why I think this view is more accurate. But that, all of that stuff, if anybody goes into it with the right heart and mindset that way, I don't see how you could land at any other belief. I mean, I don't see how we could see the Sethite view as being legit and how we could not see the multi-layered attack that's against us right now, poisoning our food, poisoning the air. We see political unrest. The earth itself is moaning and groaning for the identity of the sons of God to be made manifest, right? Like I see all of it, but I'm a seer because I see it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So
Yes, that's
not
good.
everybody can go there, but for the people who can, just be encouraged, just be encouraged. And God has a plan. He's working it all out in our time slot. It'll make perfect sense.
Mhm. So I love the way that you you laid that out. And so the very short answer to why God had to kill them is because their seed was infused with angelic seed,
Exactly.
extraterrestrial. Angels are not of this earth.
Something
And
was wrong with them. They weren't like the rest of them.
right, and the sons, and they're named the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God, and they came to take wives because they're. I believe this is I this is not provable, but I believe that because there was a legal, they wanted the legal right to have dominion as God gave Adam. He gave Adam us humans the dominion over the earth. And the only way that the B'nai Elohim could have dominion over the earth was to create their own seed, like someone who was human enough to take dominion. And so they had to have that legal right to do that. And that's why the Amalekites and Amorites and his parasites and all, all of the Hittites, everybody had that mingled seed in them, and that's why they needed to go. And even the animals were corrupt.
Yeah.
There's studies that show that there were chimeric kind of, magical things being done to animals to create mixed breeds. And so that's why God said, wipe them all out. We can't have that mixture on the earth.
Yeah, you said it so well. And Noah, if you look at, he was found righteous in his generation. It's tamim is the Hebrew word. It means without blemish. It's the same word that we would get for sacrifice, right? So like when they sacrificed a lamb, it had to be perfect without blemish. I don't think personally, I don't believe it was morality because even though he accidentally gets drunk, he curses his kid, right? Like we do see, I don't
Yeah.
think Noah was perfect in any other way than what God said he was perfect in. And I think it was based on his genome. I think he was
Yeah.
unmixed and mingled. That's what I see in the word. I mean, it's always multi-layered, so it goes above and beyond just that one view that I'm driving home to agree with what you're saying. But the seed war makes complete sense because God says verbatim the seed of the serpent versus the seed of woman, and the
Right.
crushing of the head and the striking at the heel. So what else? What other way would the enemy? He's not going to try to play mental warfare. He's literally going to set up everything he can to hinder the Messiah from coming exactly as he was stated to come through the bloodline of man. And for Yeshua to come in the flesh, I believe the enemy was working in overdrive to stop that from happening. That's why we have Genesis 6:4 that these giants, these Nephilim, because technically you can't tie the word Nephilim to be giant alone, although they fit together. It's really a hard argument to try to say a complete separation between the two because I believe that they correlate. And then you get Gia and Gigantus from the Greek and all that stuff. But ultimately, the Bible says that they were there on the earth in those days and after that.
And
Yeah.
exactly.
So when we just look at it from like everything that you said, um, God was allowing these half breeds or tainted bloodlines that even historically we can see that they were cannibalistic in nature, right? They're killing and pillaging themselves, and God was wiping them out when he sent the spies, when he sent Joshua, even David, right? We can see all these different guys that God was using to be like, you know what, clean up this area. And that's God's call. But having an answer for that so many years later and confidence and just being able to be like, man, I trusted God even when my heart dropped when I had a friend ask me that. I trusted him. I knew that there was an answer, but I think introducing the patience and walking out and taking the time to get it right, not just jumping and leeching on to whatever answer makes the sense the quickest, like that was a long process getting to that whole entire, 20, we're talking 2013, 2014, to where I was fully introduced with Mike Heiser stuff in maybe 2019, 2020. Um, so it was quite a journey, but it should just reintroduce the confidence in God's word. And then if people really understood their value and who they are and who they're called to be, it would be less scary to venture in with like another group of people. I always recommend having a couple close friends that you can actually bounce these ideas off of and pray about and sharpen on each other because that's also helpful. Just thinking out loud sometimes has been critical in my process as well.
So good. That is so good, Rod. And I'm so glad that you're presenting truth and you're bringing the gospel out there in a way that's compelling, like I said. And I just bless you and your family that's growing at the even in the moment.
Praise God. Thank you.
Yeah, if you missed it in part one, he is sitting there right now. His wife is going into labor, having labor contractions. So
Yeah.
I so appreciate you taking the time to do this. Do you have any last gold nuggets or thoughts for the audience, or
Mm.
anything else you want to share? I want to give you the last word.
I just want to say thank you for what you do and for your time. Understanding these principles of the business that the Bible does talk about and how we're to conduct ourselves and to do good. It's better to give than receive, right? And if we're able to do good or cultivate or contribute and build up what I consider to be kingdom wealth, right? And get ideas flowing freely, encouraging people to start their own businesses, and just trusting God through the process, and just really unlearning the wicked things of the world coming out of Babylon. I think that what you're doing, and especially through the business aspect, is important. We really do need that area to be highlighted, because a lot of things are going to shift and change. And if we don't have some direction and a community of like-minded people, money can destroy a person. We've seen it over and over again. So to being sharpened on that, being taught biblical principles, and then having people that understand the value that you bring to the table to build with you is huge. So I'm thankful for your platform. And then the last thing I would say, check out the podcast. There's a little bit of everything on the Millennium Mustard Seed. It's a wide spectrum. It's quite a roller coaster ride. And if anybody out there is into poetry, I've coined a new term I'm calling collective flow. I released my first book about a month ago called The Words Are Salt. Real quickly, Dr. Laura Sanger prophesied over this in 2021. God did some crazy cool stuff to bring it about, and now it's available paperback, hardcover. You can hear me talk about that on the Millennium Mustard Seed.
Oh my
So
gosh,
thank you
that's
so
so
much for the
exciting.
opportunity. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, wow. So we'll put all of the links that he just shared in the show notes wherever you're enjoying the show. And I'm pointing down because for you on Rumble and YouTube, you're seeing the video, but the rest of you guys, they'll be in the show notes wherever you're enjoying Spirit Centered Business. And Rod, thank you so much for honoring me. I appreciate that, because everything that we want to do to bring, on earth as it is in heaven, when we want to bring kingdom, it's going to take money. And who's going to do that? The business owners. And when you're trying to be a business owner, but you don't know who you are, or you're stuck under a false, I'm not worthy, I can't do this, or
Mm,
God won't let me, we break all of that off so that you can be successful and bring the kingdom in your business. So I
praise God.
appreciate that. Yep, I
It's
appreciate
been
that.
a pleasure. I've enjoyed these conversations with you. Thank you.
Good, thanks. All right, you guys, until next time, stay spirit centered. Peace out.
Hey there, SCB peeps. I want to give a huge shout out and deep appreciation and thanks to Candace Benton. She has become a super sponsor for the Spirit Centered Business Show. So I would appreciate you helping me in sending blessings and abundance back to her. Thank you so much, Candace, and you are well loved.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Centered Business with Bralynn Newby. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. The next stage of doing business by being spirit-centered is coming together in collaboration, working with spiritual principles, and knowing our destiny. Join our tribe at spiritcenteredbusiness.com, and we'll catch you on the next broadcast. Peace out.